started with silence, the kind that doesn't mean peace, but absence. At exactly 6:07 a.m., the lights at the Federal Holding Center flickered briefly. Nothing unusual, but by 6:11, a man named Elijah Kane had vanished from the facility's secure perimeter. Not fled, not escaped with sirens blazing, just disappeared. His assigned guard couldn't explain it. His record showed him still in custody, but his cell was empty, untouched, and no cameras had recorded him leaving. The disappearance wasn't announced immediately. For 3 hours, the prison operated under the assumption that Elijah Kane was inside. Then came the internal audit. When a shift change check revealed the anomaly, the facility went into partial lockdown. The media wasn't alerted yet. Not until the FBI had been called. Not until they realized the truth. They weren't tracking a fugitive trying to stay hidden. They were chasing someone who had been preparing for this day for years. Kane wasn't an ordinary criminal. No prior violent offenses, no known gang affiliations. But he had something more dangerous: patience. For nearly a decade, he had operated under multiple aliases across 4 states. Credit card fraud, identity theft, financial laundering. His fingerprints were lifted from a high-profile embezzlement case 5 years earlier. That's when he first landed on their radar. But even then, he didn't run. He watched. By noon, his face was plastered across national news. Federal escapee, armed and dangerous. But Kane hadn't touched a weapon in his known history. His power wasn't force, it was foresight. That night, a press conference was held. The spokesperson for the US Marshals stated, "We are deploying all federal resources to locate and apprehend the subject." But even as those words echoed across live broadcasts, Kane was already gone. He had left something behind though, a message, written in pencil on the inside of his mattress lining. "You waited too long. No forced entry. No guard involvement confirmed. No traceable movements." For the first 72 hours, all leads went cold, until a fuel receipt surfaced 300 miles away from the prison. A black SUV had been rented using one of Kane's oldest aliases. That vehicle was later found abandoned behind a truck stop in Missouri. No fingerprints, no DNA, just a map left behind in the glove compartment. Folded open to Canada, the FBI formed a task force within 5 days. 8 agents, 2 analysts, 1 handler, all assigned to track one man. A man with no family ties, no close contacts, and no digital trail. By the end of week 1, Kane was declared armed and presumed to be operating under a false identity. The public didn't panic yet, but inside law enforcement, the mood shifted. Kane wasn't just missing. He had made them look unprepared, vulnerable, predictable, and then the messages started. 3 letters were sent to 3 different field offices, typed. No return address, no fingerprints, just 3 words in each envelope. To DC, "You missed me." To Atlanta, "Still watching." To Denver, "Getting closer." The FBI remained tight-lipped, but internally, the case had become a top priority. One of the analysts wrote in her internal memo, "He's not escaping, he's erasing." And she wasn't wrong. Kane didn't take money. He didn't make demands. He didn't contact anyone. He simply vanished, and then reminded them he was still out there. By the time the public truly took notice, it was already too late. Kane had been gone for over 9 days, and not one camera, not one database, not one digital signature had been able to prove he still existed. But he did, and he was waiting. They called him Elijah Cain, but the name didn't mean much at first, not even to those who arrested him. He was soft-spoken, always polite, never raised his voice. He wasn't the kind to draw attention, which was exactly what made him dangerous. The more people looked past him, the more room he had to maneuver. He was born in the Midwest, a town with fewer streetlights than houses. Not a lot of crime, not a lot of noise. His father worked construction. His mother taught Sunday school. From the outside, it looked like a typical household. His teachers described him as bright, though quiet, sometimes too quiet. He got straight A's, but rarely joined in class discussions. At 17, he enlisted. Some say it was out of pride. Others say it was to get away from something. What's certain is that the structure suited him. Rules, routines, uniforms. Cain rose quickly, specializing in signals intelligence. He didn't speak much, but he listened. Closely. Always. He received clearance most young soldiers didn't. He was trusted with classified data, encryption systems, movement logs. He learned what it looked like when people disappeared, and more importantly, what it looked like when someone wanted to disappear without being noticed. After his service, he moved around. 4 states in 3 years. No long-term leases, no social media. He took contract work, mostly tech, then financial consulting. Nothing ever high profile, but each position gave him access. Bank systems, payroll, ID verification software. Bit by bit, he collected knowledge most people never thought twice about. Then came the first documented offense. A credit union flagged one of its internal audit logs. A large sum had been rerouted, nearly undetected. The reroute came from a dummy account, but when law enforcement traced it, they found Cain's digital signature buried in the code. When they brought him in, he didn't resist. In fact, he corrected the agent's math, said the amount rerouted wasn't $310,000, it was $327,400. He smiled, but not in arrogance. More like someone playing chess and letting you take a pawn. He served 2 years. Low security, minimal infractions, no fights, no misconduct reports. And when he was released, he vanished for almost 18 months. No known address, no employment records, no credit card usage. When he reappeared, it was because another crime had surfaced, this time under another name. Each time Cain resurfaced, the crimes were more refined, tighter, precise, as if he were testing vulnerabilities. One system at a time. He knew which agencies shared data and which ones didn't. He used it to his advantage. A former analyst said, he didn't break the system. He studied the space between the cracks. Cain rarely left traces, but what he left behind always made one thing clear. He was watching who was watching him. An ex-roommate told authorities Cain had 3 laptops, all disconnected from Wi-Fi. Instead, he used air-gapped drives, devices that can't connect to networks. When asked why, the roommate recalled Cain saying, "The safest way to keep something secret is to never let it touch the wire." There were no known romantic relationships, no children, no long-term friends, and yet he always seemed to know what was happening around him. Police once raided a hotel where he was reportedly staying. They found the room empty, except for a flipped-over alarm clock and a note taped to the mirror. Wrong floor. Psych evaluations from his prior arrests labeled him as non-aggressive, highly analytical, low empathy. Not violent, but not empathetic either. One psychologist called him socially fluent, emotionally indifferent. That's what scared investigators most. He didn't lash out. He planned. He calculated. And once he decided you weren't worth responding to, he simply disappeared. Cain wasn't fueled by anger. He was fueled by control. Every part of his movement was deliberate. His silence was a strategy. His stillness, planned. He wasn't the kind of person you saw coming. He was the kind that walked right past you, because to him, you were already a step behind. By the time the FBI realized what they were dealing with, it was no longer a search. It was a chase. It started with a fire alarm. At 10:43 a.m., a mid-sized regional bank in Charlotte, North Carolina, was evacuated. Staff believed it was a routine drill, the kind of thing corporate compliance runs once a quarter. But within 90 seconds of the alarm, 3 masked individuals entered through the rear exit, left unlocked during evacuation protocol. They moved with precision, not hurried, not frantic. Each step seemed timed. One remained at the lobby. Another disappeared into the server room. The third was spotted briefly in the manager's office. The entire incident lasted just under 8 minutes. When authorities arrived, there was no evidence of weapons, no injuries, no threats issued. But $1.2 million in digital currency had been rerouted from the bank's holding servers to a wallet no one could trace. Surveillance footage showed nothing. Cameras were disabled 10 seconds before the breach. Access logs were wiped. Physical evidence, zero. But someone made a mistake. During the sweep, a single fingerprint was pulled from a glass desk divider. Partial, but enough. It led to a known alias, Julian R. Marsh. That alias belonged to Elijah Cain. This wasn't the first time his name had been connected to unusual financial patterns, but it was the first time he had directly, though quietly, been linked to a high-profile heist. The media didn't cover the story immediately. The bank denied wrongdoing. Internally, however, federal agents classified the breach as a Level 3 federal intrusion, triggering a national response. It took less than a week for Cain's real identity to be attached to the event. When law enforcement attempted to detain him at a rental property registered to another alias, they found the unit completely empty. No furniture, no documents, no trace of his presence, except for a metal paperclip bent into the shape of a key resting on the stove. 3 days later, the FBI added his face to their most wanted list. That's when the headlines exploded. News anchors across the country broadcast grainy surveillance composites. Photos of Cain at previous court hearings resurfaced. Friends and former colleagues were interviewed. Some claimed he'd vanished years earlier. Others didn't believe the accusations. But all agreed on one thing. He wasn't ordinary. A former professor described him as dangerous in the quietest way imaginable. Then came the escape. At a rest stop on the border of Tennessee and Kentucky, Cain was reportedly spotted fueling a black 2005 Toyota Camry. A patrol officer noted the license plate. It matched a car reported stolen just hours earlier. An attempt was made to apprehend the vehicle 4 miles up the interstate. But by the time police surrounded the location, the car was empty, parked, engine warm, hazard lights blinking, but no driver. Inside the vehicle, a burner phone, a cup of coffee, still hot, and a handwritten message taped to the rearview mirror. It read, "One move behind, no prints, no traceable DNA. Just silence." He had escaped again. And this time, the public was watching. News segments speculated about his tactics. Was he trained? Did he have help? Did he study law enforcement movements? Theories ranged from military assistance to cartel affiliations. But those who had studied him knew better. Cain worked alone. Because he didn't trust anyone. Because trusting someone would have meant creating a weakness. The FBI ramped up pressure. A $500,000 reward was issued for information leading to his capture. Anonymous tips poured in. None credible, none accurate. Most led to dead ends, lookalikes, false alarms. One man even confessed to being Cain, hoping for the reward. A simple DNA test shut that down within hours. Meanwhile, Cain's trail went cold again. But this time, something changed. Letters began appearing. Short, typed notes sent to different police departments. Each just a sentence. Each signed JRM. Rules are made for those who follow. Count the seconds between doors. Loyalty is a myth. Each message hinted at something deeper. A motive, or maybe a warning. But they all said the same thing in the end. I was here. And each time, the clock restarted. By the time Cain's name reached the most wanted list, the FBI had already begun assembling a specialized task force, one with jurisdiction across states and full access to federal databases. The team comprised behavioral analysts, cybersecurity experts, field agents, and a few quiet names not publicly identified. The first thing they realized, this wasn't about brute force. Cain was precise. His patterns were subtle. His signals, when there were any, were buried inside layers of misdirection. The burner phones recovered from previous scenes were either wiped or booby-trapped with malware. One analyst's laptop was fried during the extraction process. That failure became the first embarrassment. The second came when Cain sent a package directly to an FBI field office. Inside a copy of the task force's internal memo, one that hadn't yet been made public. Redacted lines were fully visible. The message was simple. You're not ahead. Internal Affairs investigated a possible leak, but they never found the source. Phones were reissued. Agents rotated. Trust became a liability. Meanwhile, Cain seemed to vanish. No credit use, no online activity, no traceable purchases. Until a gas station camera in Idaho caught a figure in a dark hoodie buying fuel and a map with cash. The timestamp matched a tip received just hours earlier from a payphone in Utah. The image quality was poor. No face, no license plate, but the posture, the shoulders, the quiet nod to the cashier. It was enough. The task force moved. 2 agents flew to Idaho. 2 more waited near the Nevada border. Nothing. He had crossed again. But how? A new theory surfaced. Cain was using rest areas as info dumps, leaving USBs inside vending machine compartments, planting burner devices behind paper towel dispensers. One was eventually found. Inside, a list of coordinates and the phrase, "count them." They did. The coordinates aligned with previous tip locations, but never crime scenes. Not one led to a confirmed Cain sighting. He was creating a map. But for what? An FBI profiler began connecting dots, dates, locations, phrases from his cryptic letters. A disturbing pattern emerged. Every tip Cain left corresponded with anniversaries of past arrests, botched raids, or cases thrown out due to technicalities. It wasn't random. It was personal. One field agent said, off record, "He's not running from us, he's running us." Then came the second package. This time, a USB and a burner phone arrived together. Inside the drive was a single video clip, 27 seconds. A nighttime shot of a city street. No narration, no title. Just Cain walking past the federal courthouse, looking directly at the camera. The burner phone rang 2 minutes later. The voice on the other end. I told you, one move behind. They tried tracing it. Too late. In DC, higher-ups demanded answers. The task force was now under scrutiny. Budgets tightened. Pressure mounted. Cain responded with silence. No letters, no appearances, no slips. For the first time in months, he was completely invisible. Which is why the next clue was so cruel. A former agent, dismissed years ago after a corruption charge, received a package at home. No return address. Inside, a photo of Cain as a teenager, sitting beside that very agent in a juvenile facility. The date, 1999. Attached was a note. I remember. Was Cain circling those who failed him? Or was he baiting those who failed others? Inside the task force, questions turned inward. How many had ties to Cain's past? Who knew more than they admitted? And who was next? The silence was deafening. After months of moves and counter-moves, of coded messages and surveillance photos, Cain stopped playing, or so it seemed. He simply disappeared. The last confirmed sighting placed him at a truck stop in Colorado. A blurry frame, hood up, shoulder bag, cash transaction. The receipt timestamp was exact, 12:44 a.m. But by the time agents arrived, the cameras were gone. Burned in a freak electrical short, the clock said. Power surge. Investigators didn't believe him. Then came the false alarms. A man detained in New Mexico. Same build, similar features. But it wasn't Cain. A homeless tip in Montana. A supposed motel sighting in Alabama. Each one ate up resources. Each one turned up nothing. But the strange part was this. Cain's old aliases began popping up. Not him, just the names. One was used to rent a car in Arkansas, another to check in at a hospital under a false injury, a third attached to a storage unit in Nevada, empty except for a mirror, a single glove, and a Polaroid photo of an empty field. It was like he wanted them chasing shadows. Then he made it worse. A retired marshal received a package. Inside, a cassette tape, no label. On it, muffled audio. Cain speaking, calm, controlled. I never left. You just never looked right. The audio was geotagged to a city in Oregon. The FBI launched a search, but the building on the tape's metadata had been demolished weeks earlier. More time lost, more pressure applied. He was mocking them again. Then, 2 weeks later, an officer in South Carolina stopped a man for a broken taillight. Something felt off. The plates were fake. The driver too calm. When asked for ID, he smiled, said he had none, then bolted into the woods. A chase followed, brief but intense. The man escaped into the dark, leaving behind a jacket with two things inside: a copy of an old arrest warrant and a photo of the original task force, every face circled, one marked with an X. The message was clear. Cain was still watching, still close. The task force regrouped, locations rechecked, relatives interviewed again, but nothing was out of place. No known associates had seen him, no purchases, no fingerprints, until a call came in from a small-town librarian. She said a man had visited several times over a 2-week span. Quiet, well-read, always asking for books on law enforcement tactics and criminal psychology. He used cash, never gave a name. But one day, she found a post-it note tucked inside a book on forensic countermeasures. It read, "Don't look for me, look at you." She handed it over. The handwriting matched Kane's. It was his way of flipping the hunt upside down, making them question themselves, doubt the process. He wasn't just avoiding capture. He was dismantling the logic used to find him. Every missed tip, every delay, every piece of disinformation, it all played into his strategy. He didn't vanish by running. He vanished by staying one psychological step ahead. And in the gaps he left behind, there was only silence. Empty rooms, blank screens, and fear. From the beginning, it seemed random. The states, the cities, the dates. There was no clear connection. But once investigators laid out a full map of every confirmed sighting, alias activation, and digital breadcrumb, something unsettling came into focus. It wasn't random, it was methodical. Each city Kane appeared in shared a single trait. Either it housed a federal building, a training academy, or was the hometown of someone from the original task force. This wasn't movement by necessity. It was movement by design. He wasn't avoiding justice. He was circling it. Kane's pattern wasn't about where he went, but why he chose each place. Investigators found that every town corresponded to a location where he'd either lived, trained, or had been previously denied employment. It was like he was reliving his own rejection file, but backward. And with each stop, he left something small, almost meaningless on the surface. A receipt with a familiar name, a locker rental in someone else's hometown, a cryptic note referencing a dismissed agent. At first, they seemed like taunts. Later, they were seen as maps. In one location, he used the identity of a former corrections officer. In another, he mailed a postcard featuring a local courthouse with one word written on the back. Remember, the profiler brought in notice something else. Kane's crimes were escalating in precision, not brutality. He wasn't interested in inflicting pain. He was interested in controlling perception. One profiler noted, "He's not obsessed with destruction. He's obsessed with being understood on his terms." Surveillance logs found Kane had visited a DMV in disguise, standing in line next to a retired FBI analyst. He didn't speak. He didn't act. He just stood there. Later, the analyst recalled a strange chill, like something was off. That moment, they realized, wasn't about risk. It was about demonstration. Kane could get close, very close, and then vanish again. What connected his crimes wasn't motive. It was message. Each action seemed to echo a theme. "I was right. You were wrong." This behavior wasn't just revenge. It was doctrine. He believed the system had failed him, and now he was correcting it. One investigator compared it to a chess match, where Kane only made moves when it forced them into check, never just for pressure, always with finality. But the scariest part wasn't the crimes. It was the pauses, the gaps. Weeks, even months, would pass. No tips, no sightings, no chatter. Then suddenly, another clue. Always precise, always designed to undo what they thought they knew. He wasn't vanishing anymore. He was choreographing doubt, and doubt spreads faster than fear. The closer they thought they got, the further behind they actually were. Kane didn't want to escape forever. He wanted to be understood forever. From the outside, it looked like they had done everything right. Dozens of agents, multi-jurisdiction coordination, round-the-clock surveillance. But the cracks weren't in the effort. They were in the silence between the reports. The earliest misstep came from a simple mix-up in paperwork. A 911 call logged under the wrong precinct delayed follow-up by 72 hours. By the time the FBI got the alert, Cain was already across state lines. Then came the surveillance video. A blurry clip from a gas station camera caught a man matching his description. He lingered near a payphone, never used it, just stood. The footage was mislabeled, stored under the wrong date, not reviewed for weeks. Small things, but they added up. A local deputy who once pulled over a man in a rental car matching Cain's last known vehicle didn't run the plates. No reason to, he said. The man seemed polite. Another witness, a cashier, remembered someone paying in cash for a prepaid phone and asking for duct tape. She gave the tip to a private hotline. That hotline never forwarded the message. Interagency tension made things worse. Different task forces used different software. Leads were lost in translation, literally. An encrypted email sat unread in an outdated inbox. And then there were the moments that can't be excused by clerical error. One agent admitted they dismissed a tip because it came from an ex-con. Another said the timeline didn't feel right. Feeling isn't evidence. And evidence was all Cain ever needed to stay ahead. Internal memos show there were at least 3 occasions where Cain used false IDs with names previously flagged. No one checked the database overlap. They had the information. They just didn't connect it in time. There's a report, never made public, about a raid gone wrong. Wrong house, wrong suspect. Cain watched it happen from a diner across the street. He left a napkin behind. It read, "Close. There's more." A park ranger swore he saw someone camping off trail, alone, middle-aged, looked like the fugitive from the news. He called it in, got a call back 2 weeks later. Even law enforcement families weren't safe from doubt. One investigator's spouse received a postcard. No return address, just 3 words. "Heard you're close." Paranoia crept in. Doors were double locked. Agents moved their families. Cain had become more than a fugitive. He was now a mirror, reflecting every gap, every flaw, every delay in the system. One supervisor put it bluntly. He didn't outrun us. He outweighted us. There were moments, brief, critical, when Cain was within reach, but the moment passed. Each misconnection wasn't just a mistake. It was an invitation to realize the truth too late. He wasn't hiding from the law. He was watching how the law worked and betting on its hesitation. The trail may have gone cold, but the echoes never stopped. What Cain left behind wasn't just confusion. It was fear, grief, and voices that still speak his name with hesitation. Interviews were conducted with those most affected, victims' families, former investigators, even anonymous tipsters who had once sworn they'd seen him. A mother whose son was caught in Cain's first escape attempt recalled the chilling aftermath. He didn't sleep for months. Every creak in the floor, he thought it was him coming back. One former FBI agent, now retired, admitted on record, "I still lock my windows twice, not because I think he's watching, but because I know how he thinks." Cain was never just a suspect. He became a presence. A shadow too clever to be caught, too quiet to be ignored. Audio logs recovered from an old cellmate, now deceased, include haunting monologues. In one, Cain reportedly says, "They think I care about being seen. I only care about being remembered." And remembered he was. The families of those harmed by his crimes still receive strange letters. Phrases clipped from newspapers. No fingerprints, no postmark. Just words like soon or almost. Some say it's copycats. Others believe Cain never really let go. A former girlfriend, whose identity was withheld, gave an interview under voice distortion. He was quiet, but not calm, always measuring people, like he was memorizing how to mimic them later. She claimed he once told her, "I don't disappear, I just become someone else." There were also the messages, dozens of tips submitted through secure channels, some laughable, others disturbing. One voicemail left at a regional office simply whispered, "You're looking the wrong way." Another said, "Stop reading files, start reading people." Some believed Cain was mocking them. Others thought he was still in control. In one chilling twist, a young girl's drawing, found at a school in New Hampshire, depicted a man in a hoodie watching through a window. When asked who it was, she replied, "Mommy says that's the man we don't talk about." The school's security footage from the week before showed no intruders, but the back fence gate had been left open. Then there were the items found in places they shouldn't be. A key left inside an officer's locked desk. A note slid under the door of a retired profiler. A photograph of an empty chair placed on a grave, all pointing to one idea. Cain was never really gone. And then came the voices of the investigators themselves. One said, "I chased him for 6 years. I still don't know what I was really chasing." Another, now in therapy, shared, "We thought we were hunting a man, but it felt like he was unraveling the people who hunted him." Cain's legacy wasn't just elusiveness, it was infection. He planted paranoia like seeds and watched them grow. Even now, years later, a podcast featuring ex-agents recorded one final anonymous tip. He doesn't run, he lingers. You just don't realize it until he's already moved on. The question still remains, how do you catch someone who became the absence itself? In the end, it wasn't the crimes that haunted people. It was the silences he left behind. Silences that spoke louder than any confession ever could. And those voices, still afraid, still unresolved, are all Cain ever needed to never truly be forgotten. Years passed, but the questions never did. What if he died? What if he changed his identity? What if he's still out there watching just like before? One theory suggests he escaped the country. Forged documents, private charter, disguised as someone no one would suspect. The kind of person who never gets a second glance at an airport. Another theory, more unsettling, suggests he never left. That he stayed in plain sight, a drifter, a handyman, a neighbor who never talks too much. A blurry figure in the background of a town parade video made the rounds once. Freeze frame analysis. Same jawline, same posture, but no confirmation. A group of online sleuths followed leads for years, created databases, timelines, and location overlays. One post claimed Cain was spotted in Eastern Europe. Another swore he was working construction in Texas. Both were investigated. Neither could be proven. And then there's the theory no one wants to admit out loud, that Cain didn't work alone. Some believe he had help, maybe from inside law enforcement. Someone who cleaned up, made documents disappear, shifted blame just enough to keep things murky. A whistleblower once said Cain's file had been flagged restricted access, higher clearance than most agents had. Why? No answer ever came. Then came the most recent sighting. A woman, hiking alone, said she was followed for nearly 2 miles by a man with a limp and a hood. He never approached, but when she turned to confront him, he vanished. No footprints, no tire tracks, just an empty path behind her. When asked if she got a look at his face, she said, "I didn't need to. I knew it was him." Still, the FBI has not closed the case. His profile remains in the database. His picture, age progressed, still sits on the most wanted page. Some agents say they're close. Others say they've moved on. But Cain's shadow remains, in case files, in whispered conversations, in unmarked letters sent to families long after the funerals ended. One envelope, postmarked with no return address, held nothing but a photo. A woman on a park bench, smiling, alive. The message on the back, "You missed one." Was it real or a cruel hoax? That's the final mystery. Because even if Cain is gone, his presence isn't every locked door, every flicker on a security cam, every breath held when headlights paused too long outside a home. He remains not as a man, but as a question no one's been able to answer. And until that question is answered, the case isn't truly closed. Now that you've heard it all, ask yourself, what would you have seen? A neighbor too quiet? A glance that lingered a second too long? A newspaper clipping you didn't recognize in someone's hand? Would you have noticed the red flags? The wrong smile at the wrong time? A name that didn't match a face? Look back. Rewind everything you know about this case. The fake IDs, the unmapped routes, the chilling messages he left behind, the fingerprints never found. Would you have connected the dots? Would you have spoken up? Would you have called Cain? Or would he have slipped right past you too? Just another person in the crowd, forgotten until the moment it's too late. That's the part no one likes to admit, that he didn't need to run. He just needed us not to look closely. So, would you have looked closely? Would you have trusted your gut? Or would you have explained it away like so many others did? Maybe the real question isn't who Cain was. Maybe it's who we are when we let someone vanish in plain sight. If you made it to the end, we want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Was justice served? Or is this still one of the FBI's greatest failures? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We've got more stories coming your way, more truths to uncover. Because some cases don't go cold. They just wait for the right person to pay attention. Could that be you?